Welcome to T. Lokes, Tucson's local business podcast. I'm your host, L. Connor McEverly, and in each episode, we embark on a journey to connect with the passionate minds behind the businesses and nonprofits that make our community thrive. Join me as I sit down with the owners, visionaries, and change makers who pour their hearts into shaping the local landscape. We explore the challenges, triumphs, and unique journeys that define Tucson's business community. From the corner coffee shop to the innovative startups and impactful nonprofits, T. Lokes is your window into the diverse stories that make our city special. Tune in and get ready to get connected. This is T. Lokes. Howdy, folks, and welcome to T. Lokes, your Tucson local business podcast. I'm your host, L. Connor McEverly, and joining me via virtual chat today is the owner and operator of Solutions by Christin, a coaching service for those who wish to excel in restaurant and hospitality leadership. Christin is the host of the No Hesitations podcast, and very recently has just released her first book, The Hospitality Leader's Roadmap: Go from Ordinary to Extraordinary. It is my pleasure to introduce to the show good friend of the pod, Christin Marvin. Christin, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Connor. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for the opportunity. I mean, I know we're going to talk about me and the book and the business and all that good stuff, but I got to give you a shout out because you produce my show, and it's a game changer. So thank you for everything you do.
Of course, I'm definitely happy to do it. It's one of the things I do, and I really enjoy your show and your mission. So it's really awesome to get you on the show today and talk more about what you do.
Love it.
And it's got to be fun to be on the other side of the interview, right?
It was weird the first couple of times I did it, and I'm like, I know what this is. I know what this is like, but it just like anything else, it takes practice. But I'm excited to kind of get a peek behind the scenes of how you pull off your show. You know, I'm always gathering tips and tricks from everybody else. So that's a good learning experience.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you pick up a couple neat tricks.
Yeah, I'm sure I will.
So we have a ton to talk about today, from your coaching business to the recent release of your first book, which congratulations, by the way. That's awesome.
Thank you so much.
So in the Hospitality Leader's Roadmap, you discuss your introduction to the restaurant industry, how you fell in love with it, and the challenges you faced as you evolved within the hospitality space. And while I highly recommend our listeners check it out, can you tell our listeners a sort of summary of your quest in the culinary world?
Yeah, absolutely. I started as a line cook at 15. Like many, the restaurant world was my first job and first career. And I fell in love with it. I after I was a line cook, I moved on to working for a chain restaurant where I learned how to serve and bartend. And I loved working for a chain at that point in my career because the structure and the systems were just really a great foundation for me to learn how a well-run restaurant ran and what it looked like and what it took to be successful. So that structure was really good for me. I then moved into the independent space, and that's really where I started to fall in love with the industry. I worked for a 5-star, 5-dining hotel in Colorado Springs for 5 years, and worked there while I was going to college, and then decided when I graduated from college with a marketing degree, I couldn't find anything in my field that was paying as much as I was making at the hotel. And again, I loved what I was doing. So I went to the food and beverage director. I said, how do I make this a career forever? And he said, you need to take our management training program and move up the ranks. And so during that 5 years I was with them, I was able to open as a server, a cocktail lounge that they were renovating, but also then as a manager, a fine dining establishment. And I was able to work for an incredible general manager who worked for Danny Meyer in New York, mixologist out of New York, and then a Michelin star chef. And it just opened my eyes to how you could go really above and beyond to create a really beautiful guest experience through food and beverage. And through that, 5 years of learning and growing and just being curious and hungry, that positioned my husband and I to move to Denver. And that was where, at 30 years old, I became a managing partner with a local group. And we had 2 concepts that were different. One was fine dining French, one was fine dining Italian. Okay. And then we opened 5 more concepts in 5 years that were a speakeasy, casual Italian that was really high volume, We opened a barbecue place, just all kinds of fun, different concepts. And so I did that for 5 years and wanted to invest in opening a restaurant, which I did with them. It failed miserably. So that was my first taste of failure. As we know,
Yeah.
80% of restaurants fail within the first couple of years. And then I wanted to change kind of my quality of life and stay working in daytime, but keep the volume aspect of what I was doing and take a step back in my career. And so I joined a company that was locally owned. We had 6 locations, all the same concept, high volume brunch. And then we ended up going nationally. So we went from 6
Wow.
to 48 locations in 7 years. And that helped me become the expert in leadership development, growth, change management, tools, resources, systems, all the things that you need in order to help a company really explode like that. So I did that for a little bit. And then at the end, I was completely burned out. So I started working with a coach to figure out what my next move was. And that caused my husband and I to redesign our lifestyle, which meant giving up our dream home, moving out of Denver, me starting my own company, supporting the business, and moving down to Tucson. So here we are.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah,
That's quite an adventure. And I think it's like
it
it's
was.
it's clear to say like the restaurant industry has been a huge part of your life.
Yeah, over 20 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. So I want to know a little bit more about Solutions by Kristen.
Mhm.
So what is your mission and what set you on it?
I, through my experience in the industry, I believe that there is a severe lack of leadership development resources available to restaurants, especially right now. During the pandemic, 6 million people left the industry. Those positions have been filled, but they are being filled by people with less and less experience. What that's doing is putting more pressure on leadership than ever. Independent restaurant owners are working in their business and picking up shifts more than they have in years. And that's good for them because it's exposing them to things that they need to work on and build systems and training procedures and working on culture and hiring and all that good stuff. However, because they're working in their business so much, they're not able to step back and strategize. And so I'm able to be a partner for them for a brief amount of time in their business journey to be able to help them strategize and think about their culture and solve their biggest challenges. So I partner with restaurants to overcome their biggest challenges in leadership development and business so that they can really spend time and energy where it matters most to them.
Awesome. Okay. And so that's really interesting. What do you think kind of contributes to this sort of this cycle of having less and less trained leaders in the restaurant industry?
The restaurant industry, unfortunately, has a reputation of really unhealthy work environments. There's a lot of substance abuse. I got caught up in some of that. That's in the
Yeah.
book. Um, Drug problems, alcohol problems. It's a party culture. Because of the nature of the business, you're always on your feet. You're always managing a million things at once. It's very fun. It's very energetic, but it's very taxing mentally and physically. And so
Definitely.
when you get done with a shift at a restaurant, it's really difficult to just go home and go to sleep because you're completely wired. And so
Right.
a lot of people go out and they drink. They drink heavily and that leads to drugs, and that leads to hooking up with each other, and then they get up and they kind of do this over and over and over again. That becomes their hobby outside of work and their culture, right? So there's not
Mhm.
necessarily a health focus to the restaurant. And so people burn out. And they're typically when I was younger in the restaurant world, I wasn't really good with my money either
Right.
because I was bringing home tips every night, and I'd walk out and go, wait, I got $100, and then I go spend most of it at the bar, right? So
Right.
people are constantly looking for where they can make more money in the industry too, and so that's an unfortunate part of it. Also, I think a lot of people get into the restaurant business because they love throwing a party and they love serving food and beverage,
Right.
but the business side of things is really, really difficult to manage. And so it's really eye-opening that to them. And then they get into it and they realize it's more difficult than they thought.
Mhm.
And they have to be really strong leaders and invest in themselves in order to take care of their people. And, years and years and years ago, there were a lot more people to hire. And so the business has typically been a quick to hire, quick to fire type of environment, and there are less and less people now that are coming into the industry. And like I said, ones that are that have less experience, and so it's putting pressure on everything. And food is really expensive, as we know, just from going out to the grocery stores. Restaurants are experiencing that same thing, and labor continues to be more and more and more expensive. So everything about the business has just gotten really hard, even though it's it's always been that way. It's just heightened now.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I can definitely see where like it is such like a busy world and there's so much going on. And it might be easy to have some things like slip through the cracks. Um, so on that note, of it being really busy and potentially people not seeing everything that needs to be done in their business, what is a common misconception or a common pitfall that some of these restaurant operators you work with have fallen into?
A lot of it is a lack of work-life balance. So because we're in the hospitality industry, our job is to serve others, and we're really, really good at giving. But some of us, and I say that's us, me, are really bad at receiving. And so typically self-care is the first thing to go out the window, because when you're a restaurant owner and operator, you're working anywhere from 60 to 70 to 80 hours a week in your business. And depending on your hours of operation. If you're open for lunch, you got to be there before lunch. And then if you're open all day from lunch to dinner, sometimes you're not going home until after the doors close, depending on where you're at financially and how much support staff you have. And so when people open restaurants and they hire maybe one manager, there are a lot of people that are depending on you every single day, from the guests and the staff. And so typically, depending on how well you've developed your staff and how well your restaurant is running, you can go home and not have to answer texts and emails and take emergency phone calls.
Right.
But in the beginning stages of getting your restaurant going, or when your restaurant's not in a good position, you're always on. And that's really, really taxing.
Definitely. I mean, I work maybe 50, 60 hours a week at maximum, and that's pretty brutal. I don't even have to answer panic phone calls.
Yeah.
So that sounds like a lot of, just sounds like a lot.
Well, and imagine, being in that environment where you want to step back and strategize and have some clarity and take a breath, but you can't because the demand is coming at you so much, right? It's really challenging. So it's a lot of the clients that I work with are trying to figure out how to manage that push and pull and set some boundaries and say no. And that's really uncomfortable for us to do in the industry.
Absolutely. And, kind of on that note, what resources do you provide your clients to help them?
Yeah, it's a great question. The first and foremost, most important thing is the one-on-one coaching. The opportunity for them to spend 1 hour every other week, slowing down, committing to themselves, really taking a deep dive and being thoughtful about a challenge that they're facing and looking at different options and perspectives. We're so in the moment and we're just so reactive in this business. So, the resource that I can give for them to be proactive and really think ahead and plan, build some contingency plans is really, really important. There's also, I create leadership articles every single week on LinkedIn and on my email list. So there's things around there about how to make leadership less lonely. I write about how to set boundaries, how to have great one-on-ones with your staff and what, the impact that can have on your business, how to be mentally fit. So typically when, a client and I start working together, there are things that we talk about throughout the session that I can really coach them in on the moment. In the moment, excuse me. And then in between the sessions, there's a lot of value that I can offer from those resources that I create, or just other resources as well that I find in my community of coaches and consultants.
Right. And of course, your podcast.
Yeah. How can we forget about that? Yeah. Nice plug. Nice plug.
Oh, of course. Shameless. Howdy, listener. Are you also a podcaster seeking to stand out in the crowded audio landscape? I'm here to help. L. Connor Voice, LLC offers top-tier audio engineering, meticulous content management, and more, all tailored to save you time and elevate your podcast to new heights of professionalism. With L. Connor Voice, you can focus on what you do best, creating captivating content, while I handle the rest. say goodbye to hours spent tweaking audio levels and managing uploads. I ensure your podcast shines with polished sound quality and seamless delivery. Ready to take your podcast to the next level? Contact L. Connor Voice LLC today and make producing your podcast as easy as hitting record. For more information, go to lconnorvoice.com. Links are in the episode notes.
Are you ready to take your leadership from ordinary to extraordinary? If so, I have the perfect resource for you. My new book, The Hospitality Leader's Roadmap, Move from Ordinary to Extraordinary, is now available on Amazon in ebook, paperback, and audiobook formats. This book shares over 30 leadership lessons I've learned in my 20 years in the industry, starting as a line cook and working my way up to managing partner. It also includes 6 special episodes of my podcast that dive deeper into key leadership topics. Grab your copy on Amazon and don't forget to leave a review so others can learn from your takeaways. Thanks so much.
So kind of looking over your, experience with your coaching business, what was one of your first moments of achievement or a moment where you were like, oh yeah, this is all coming together?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I started working with a coach, I was completely burnout and lost, and I had stopped developing in my own leadership, which was what caused me to really go down in flames. And so my third or fourth coaching session, I had a huge moment of insight, sitting across the computer here on Zoom with my coach, where I went, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. This one-on-one interaction was what I'd been doing in the restaurant business for 20 years, leading teams. As a GM starting at 24 and kind of going from there. And so I was like, oh my God, I can make a business out of doing what I love, which is really helping people take a deep dive into what is going on and help them see things that they aren't necessarily seeing and really get to the root of what's going on. And so that was my first moment. And then when I started to have conversations with people about building this business and just started to work on getting clients, people were so supportive. And when my first client said yes,
Yeah.
And I know you're smiling because you get that too, right? Being
Definitely.
an entrepreneur, you're like, okay. And then the second one and the third, and so every time somebody says yes to me, I literally want to jump up and down, because I'm excited because I know it's a great thing and there's a need for it, but I get more excited that people are willing to invest in themselves and that they want to take the time to be better. And then when we have those moments of insights during the coaching sessions, it's priceless.
Right. That's interesting. So shifting gears just a little bit, you mention in your book kind of the importance of hospitality and kind of the difference of going to a restaurant and then encountering hospitality. So for our listeners or for restaurant owners who need some more clarification, can you describe what hospitality is or provide an example of how hospitality shapes a customer's experience?
No, 100%. I could talk about this all day long. There is a book behind me. I have to remember which side. Setting the Table right here.
Okay,
If I
right
can get
there.
out of the way. Eddie Meyer. I started reading in my early 20s when I started learning about hospitality. So there is a very clear difference between customer service and hospitality. Customer service is going into a place and having someone take the appropriate steps in order to make sure that you get your order. They greet you. They take your order. They prepare it. They hand it to you. You pay. That's customer service, right?
Right.
Making sure that the experience is there. Hospitality is going above and beyond all those things, and making people feel a certain way. So when you walk into a place and someone makes eye contact with you, they greet you genuinely. They are authentically themselves and they are excited that you are in their business. You have chosen them and they know that there's other competition out there, but they appreciate that. They read your body language. They can tell something's wrong. They can tell that you've never been in before and maybe you're confused by the menu. And they take initiative to be a tour guide through that menu and give you some options and talk about what they love. If someone in a restaurant recognizes that something's falling on the floor, a fork, a napkin, replaces it for you. When they anticipate your needs before you even do, that's hospitality.
All right.
When you walk out of that place, and you feel like you were just welcomed into someone's home and you want to go tell everybody about it, that's when hospitality is really present
Right.
and can really elevate an experience. And that's what sets restaurants apart, because it's easy to train people on steps of service.
Right.
It's difficult to train people on how to make people feel great.
Definitely. Definitely. And, that makes me wonder, because when you describe like scenarios with customer service, I can imagine, a lot of like chain restaurants or sort of restaurants where you go up to the counter and order and kind of take your food. Um, and, obviously having hospitality seems like it's this much more involved process. But I guess for, someone listening, maybe a restaurant operator out there who has a little bit more of like a you come to the counter and order type business, like, is that a barrier to hospitality? Or do you think that there is a way to provide hospitality to customers really no matter what your restaurant,
Yeah.
build is like?
It's a great question, because there can be a physical barrier and then there can be, a non-physical barrier. And so the counter itself could be a barrier. The host stand in a restaurant can be the barrier.
Right.
Technology can be a barrier. But
Yeah.
if you're careful about planning the experience and you keep that top of mind for your guests, you can overcome those barriers. And there are easy things to do around that, right? Counter service is
Mhm.
really the future that a lot of restaurants are going to, because of the cost of labor being so high.
Right.
It's a much more sustainable way to run a food service business in this day and age. And so, you know, what I love about counter service is you have to hand somebody your credit card, right? Or you
Right.
order through an app. There's a million ways to get your customer's name.
Right.
All it takes is somebody making the choice to use that name. If it doesn't happen very often, but when somebody says, "Thank you so much, Kristen, for coming in," it blows my mind, because they're trying to make a personal connection with me. And I appreciate that. And when I see someone's, it goes both ways, from the servers, or the hourly employees and the managers to the guests, but also the guests can do the same and lead by example. So anytime somebody has a name tag on, I always call them by their name. And sometimes that freaks them out. Right, they
Right.
forget they're wearing it,
Yeah.
or they're just not used to it, and so that 2-second personal connection can really make all the difference, no matter what space you're in. You could be at Home Depot, you can be at the grocery store, you can be in a restaurant that, you're spending $400 on dinner, or $25 on dinner, or a quick 5-minute, $5 cup of coffee.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. So one question I have kind of coming from that is obviously there is hospitality that is directed towards the customer. Is there a sort of like hospitality on the workers side and
Mm,
like on the operator side? Is there a hospitality that is offered from an operator to their staff that kind of helps the running of their facility?
there should be. Yeah, yes and no. Yeah, I scream about this sometimes on LinkedIn,
Right.
over and over and over again. If we put the same amount of attention to detail into the guest experience, as we do into the guest experience, into the employee experience,
Right.
restaurants would not have turnover like they do. Turnover is one thing that will absolutely kill your business, because it impacts the consistency of your food, the consistency of your service, the cleanliness of your establishment, and your guest experience. Right? People
Yeah.
love coming in and building relationships with people and seeing the same people over and over and over again, especially in a town as small as Tucson.
Right.
We love regulars. You can't operate a business without regulars. You can't operate a business without regular staff either.
Right.
And so those people become your experts, and they're your trainers, and they move into your managers, and they help you build a bench, and they help you be able to spend more time outside of your restaurant ultimately.
Right.
So there should be a lot of thought that goes into the employee experience, from their pay to one-on-one check-ins with them, to strong interviewing practices, to setting really clear expectations,
Right.
to their uniforms and standards, and to how to coach around performance so that everyone is really performing at the same level, and also feeling like they're engaged, they're appreciated,
Right.
and that they're growing and developing in their roles.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's really interesting. And, you just saying that makes me think about, times I've gone to restaurants where I'm like, I love this. This is great. And, I go again and it doesn't taste the same, or like there's a different server. And, it makes me think about maybe how understated restaurants are to like your community, like I feel, and this is me just armchairing it. But I feel like, food obviously brings people together, and, there's a big impact that food has, just drawing people together, making conversation, and like, having fun. I think most dinners are probably pretty good. I mean, depending on your family Thanksgiving, but like, I really don't know where I'm going with this.
No, it's
Um,
fine. Yeah. I mean, no, it's when you think about like where restaurants started from, I mean, people, it's a very much a cultural thing. It's, when you sit down with your family, it's around a meal, right? It's one of
right,
the few times that people as a family get together. And when you have, giant potlucks with your family in the park, there's always food involved. Food is always a great component. And so I understand why a lot of restaurateurs say, gosh, I love this experience. I've been doing this since I was a child, or I've been helping grandma cook in the kitchen
right,
forever. I can take this and make it, bring it to a much larger audience or scale it. But it's so difficult when you take that concept and then you move it into a brick and mortar space, and then you have to figure out how to draw people to you, right? Because your
right,
family's just going to come over because they're your family, but
right.
you've got to figure out how to grow beyond the friends and family aspect, and it's difficult. But yeah, I mean, restaurants are special, and whether you're a single diner going in to treat yourself, or you just want to go in and get some work done, which is what I do often, or you want to go celebrate something. I mean, there's a restaurant out there for everyone for every single occasion.
Right.
And it's an amazing industry, but it's very, very challenging at the same time.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And, kind of working off of that, let's say that right now listening, there is a restaurant operator and they're just loving what we're talking about, and they're really wanting to make their restaurant a better place for people. But what may this restaurant owner or manager be experiencing that should indicate that they reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. A great question. There's a lot of things, and sometimes when people come to me, they say, "Hey, I'm really struggling with this." For example, I've got a client who is struggling to communicate her expectations very clearly to her management team. So the management team isn't performing at the level that she wants.
Right.
So we've talked about that. It's not that the management team isn't doing a good job. It's that the expectations haven't been clearly set up for them, or there haven't been systems in place. So we create those systems, right? I've got another client who has been in the business for over 20 years, has 15 different concepts, and is so busy that
Yeah.
they are wondering what they're doing and are losing their passion for the business. And so getting back to why, helping them kind of prevent that burnout, finding their passion again, reigniting their values is one. I have another client
Mhm.
who is from New Zealand and wants
Nice.
to move his family to that country, back to New Zealand for a year,
Okay.
and wants his food businesses to be fully, he's got 3 locations, fully operational while he's gone. He just wants to be available for a case of emergency. So
Right.
we're working on creating systems and hiring the right people and creating those job descriptions and brainstorming all this in
Right.
order to set him up to be able to make that leap in 6 months to a year in his timeline. So I would say there's a lot of different things, because there's no one size fits all when it comes to restaurants. They're all very,
Right.
very different. Some restaurant owners could have a really hard time keeping staff, and they
Yeah.
don't know why, because when you're losing staff, you're constantly hiring staff and you're training staff. You
Right.
don't have a lot of time to step back and go, what is going on? Right.
Right.
It's usually a cultural problem. So that's a big one. If they are just really unhappy with what they're doing and they need to make a change, or they want to make a change, that's a really great time to reach out for help. And I do complimentary, gifted coaching sessions to people just to explore. Sometimes we solve the
Right.
problem in that one, and that's great.
Nice.
Sometimes they realize, oh, there's more things that we need to unpack here, which is beautiful.
Right.
Um, it really just depends. And sometimes coaching may not be the right fit for them in this moment, but 6 months down the road or 12 months down the road, it may make sense for them. But if they feel like they're out of control, there's a loss of control, they just don't know what's really going on, and they can't figure out how to solve the problems,
Mhm.
that's a great time to raise their hand and ask for help.
Awesome. So let's just say that someone has heard what we just said here and they want to contact you. What is a good way for someone to reach out to you?
Yeah, I throw my cell phone number out there. People call me crazy, but my phone number is 719-494-6074. You can also go to my website at christinmarvin.com. My name is spelled kind of weird. It's Christin, but I'm always available.
Awesome. Yeah. And folks, we'll have links to the number and the website in the episode notes. So if you want to contact Christian, go down to the episode notes and check that out. But, shifting gears again, I want to talk a little bit about the hospitality leadership roadmap, move from ordinary to extraordinary. So this is a broad question, but in summary, what does this book mean to you?
Oh, that's again, we could talk about this for a long time. This book, I wanted to, again, like I said earlier, offer a different leadership development resource for people that was something that they could really relate to in every stage of their career. So this book starts at 15 when I was a
Right.
line cook, goes through AGM, GM, regional manager, managing partner,
Right.
burnout, quitting drinking, overcoming that, becoming mentally fit, and then becoming an entrepreneur. So no matter what stage you're at in your career, this is a book that you can pick up and put down and come back to over and over again. Through
Right.
writing this book, I knew that I wanted to offer a resource for people and share all the lessons I learned and pay things forward and still because I love developing people. So this was another great way to be able to do that. Right.
Right.
But I think what this experience meant to me at the end was an opportunity to slow down and really celebrate my accomplishments.
Right.
And I move a million miles an hour and I have the restaurant industry to thank for that. I love it. And it's made me who
Right.
I am. But I've never been good about slowing down and celebrating what I've done. I've always just quickly moved on to the next task. I've opened 13 restaurants in my career. It's like, okay, on to the next one, on to the next one, on to the next one.
Right.
So this has been great. This writing the book has been a great opportunity to do that. I will say too, there were some moments in my career that I think I needed to shift my perspective on. You've got a lot of different perspective when you're 24. Now I'm 43. So things
Right.
change as you grow up. This really helped me kind of see things from a big picture perspective
Right.
and reconnect with a lot of people that were in this book and in my life during the course. And so I was able to pick up the phone and call people and reestablish connections some people I hadn't talked to in 17 years and
Wow.
to say, let's talk about that time at this restaurant when we did this and get some content for the book, but also just reminisce with each other and
Right.
have moments of appreciation and gratitude for each other. So it means a lot. It's hard, I could give it 100 other
Totally.
reasons here and topics, but yeah,
I
those are
hear
just a few.
that.
Yeah.
And you kind of mentioned like a little bit of this in your previous answer, but in your book, you talk about some of the highs, some of the lows, and the lessons that you learned on your journey. Can you tell me more about your writing process or what it was like to recount your life story?
Mm. Yeah, I've never been someone who's considered themselves a writer. I started writing newsletters when I started the business a little over a year ago, again to offer additional resources to people. But I knew that I wanted to write a book, and so I wrote those newsletters and started journaling to kind of practice and prep
Right.
myself. I was working with my coach, and I said I want to write a book, and he said This is what we do as coaches. We challenge people to get real uncomfortable. So he
Right.
challenged me to write 2 chapters. And I wrote 2 chapters and then I kind of let it sit and didn't do anything for about 6 or 8 months.
Right.
And then I went to a podcast conference and I found a company called selfpublishing.com and I met with them and they said, hey, we can take you through the entire process, help you guide you, help you become an author. And that was in January. And I came home and I immediately started getting up at 5 a.m. every morning and spending 1 hour just writing. And,
Wow.
and a good friend of mine who's written a couple books said, Kristen, don't worry about getting it perfect. You're going to go through the editing process. Just write. That's your only job. So I just really like word vomited for
Yeah.
a couple months until I got the book written.
Right.
And then I went through about 7 or 8 rounds of editing to get it to where it is today. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. In an episode that I have on Connor Reed's books, my other podcast, I've started doing author interviews and I talk with an author named Jack Larson. And he didn't start writing until after he retired. And one of his biggest pieces of advice for anyone who wanted to write was just write. Just start, and keep going. Because you're going to have those editing processes and coming back and refining your messages and your chapters.
Yeah, it's so daunting. And so I think when when my friend told me just write, like that's your only job, just sit down and get it all down on paper. It was so therapeutic for me to just have that weight lifted off my shoulders that it doesn't have to be right. You're going to have some help with that.
Right.
And, they say like your book is going to be published with like 85%, you're going to have some errors. And so it doesn't have to be perfect.
Right.
Just everybody has a story to tell though. So I definitely encourage anybody to write a book. You should write a book.
Oh, thank you. I just might. But I've made my business reading books rather than writing them.
Perfect.
I'm not complaining. So I guess, what was one significant challenge you had when writing the book?
I think one mistake I made was my mind map and my outline wasn't as tight as it should have been when I started writing. And so because this was my memoir, I just wrote my entire life story and there was a lot I needed to cut out. And so when this is actually kind of mortifying, but now I'm over it. When I sent my manuscript off to my editor, her comments back to me were, "Your book lacks structure and focus." And I went, "Oh shit." Sorry, I don't know if I can cuss.
No, you can
So knowing that now and starting to think about books 2 and 3, the tighter your outline is and the clearer it is, the easier it's going to be for you to write a really concise book. So I would have somebody look over that outline that's an author or an author coach in hindsight, and have somebody give you some tips on that. Because I was all over the place, and then when I went through edits, it was like I really got to figure out what lessons I want to teach in each chapter, and I've got to cut out the rest of the stuff. So I ended up cutting out quite a bit.
Right. I mean, that makes sense, especially when you're talking about a memoir and like what details are really important and like what gets the message through. And I guess, kind of expanding on that, like for a reader, if you could impart just 3 pieces of wisdom from your book, or you hope that someone can pull 3 pieces of wisdom from your book, what would those 3 items be?
Advocating for yourself is something that is so important to your success. Speak up. Don't let people wait to see you. Don't think that your hard work is just going to pay off. Advocate. Learn how to manage up.
What does
I was
that mean?
I was very intimidated by some of my bosses, and I didn't feel comfortable asking for what I needed again, which is advocating for yourself.
Right.
I also had a lot of expectations I kind of put my bosses on pedestals, that they were these perfect leaders, and they're not.
Right.
Everybody's human and they all have lessons to learn. And so the better communicator you can be and the more that you can try to have empathy for your leader and support them will come back to yourself as well.
Nice.
The third one, I would say, own your leadership development. Don't think that it's anybody else's responsibility to develop you. It's not the company's, their companies share some responsibility for this, but you are in complete control of your future and your growth and challenging yourself and getting really uncomfortable. So make sure you're in an environment where you can do that. And if you're not, make a change.
All right. Well, Christin, it's been awesome talking to you today. We are going to have to be winding down here, though. So I wanted to ask, for those who want to hear more about your insights, to learn more about Solutions by Christin, hear the No Hesitations podcast, or even get your book, where can folks go?
Yeah. So ChristinMarvin.com. So again, ChrisTin. It's got links to the podcast, the book, all of my blogs and newsletters. I am very active on LinkedIn, mostly at Christin-Marvin. And then the book will be available on October 15th on Amazon in ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Thanks to Connor. Thank you so much.
Of course.
And then the podcast, again, is No Hesitations Podcast. And you can find that anywhere you listen to your shows.
And folks, again, we are going to have links to all of that in the episode notes. So go check those out and talk to Christin, hear what she has to say. Do you have any events coming up in the near future that people should keep an eye out for?
Thanks for asking, Connor. I actually do have a really exciting event coming up in Tucson. I'm going to be holding a book launch party on Wednesday, October 30th at the MSA Annex at Westbound Tap and Bottle from 5 to 7. So please come down, grab a copy of the book for yourself, grab a few for your leadership team, your management team in your restaurants, and I'll be there signing books. I hope to see you all there.
Well, Christin, I have one more question for you. It's the question I ask everybody who comes on my show. What is one thing out of the many that you love about Tucson?
Oh man, that's a hard one to pick. Just one. I love the palm trees.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That was part of the reason we moved here, blue skies and palm trees. And I just, every time I look at them, they make me happy. There was a really funny show, a comedian, I'm blanking on his name, but they were joking around about how palm trees in LA serve no purpose.
Right.
One of the old writers for SNL, John something. Anyway, and I, they provide no purpose. There's no shade, whatever, and I was just like, they're beautiful, they're great to look at. So every time I look at a palm tree, I smile. It's part of the reason why we moved here.
That's awesome. Yeah. The palm tree really evokes a lot of like a luxurious sort of vacation feel.
Totally.
Especially for those who haven't grown up around them.
Yeah.
So
100%.
I get that. Well, Christin, it's been great having you on the show today. Thank you so much for coming on and talking with me about your coaching business, about your book, and more about your insights and experience in the culinary world.
Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Of course. And we'll talk to you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. And that's a wrap for another episode of T. Lokes, your go-to podcast for uncovering the untold stories of Tucson's local businesses and nonprofits. A big thank you to our incredible listeners for joining us on this journey of connection and discovery. I want to extend a huge thank you to Christin Marvin from Solutions by Christin for coming on the show and sharing with us the insights and the lessons she's learned along her hospitality and restaurant industry adventures. Be sure to go pick up the Hospitality Leaders Roadmap book, available now, and go check out the No Hesitations podcast. Links are in the episode notes. Show them some love and check out their links in the episode notes. A big thank you to Louis Sanders from Sound Monk Studios for composing the awesome T. Lokes theme music. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay connected with Tucson's vibrant business scene, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback is invaluable, and it helps us continue bringing you engaging conversations. As we wrap up, remember that T. Lokes isn't just a podcast, it's a community. Let's keep the conversation going on social media. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or our Discord channel and share your thoughts, suggestions, or even recommend a local business or nonprofit you'd like to see featured on the show. Thank you once again for being a part of the T. Lokes community. Until next time, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep supporting the heartbeat of Tucson. Toodaloo.